Hey Dev Team, welcome back to Flutter with Drag. We're going to carry on with this app today, and I've been thinking about how much more I want to do with this because, with apps you can go on forever. And I'm going to draw a line today under what we're doing in terms of the core code, and then do an episode or maybe two, depending on how long it takes, on making it look a lot better than it currently does. So with that in mind, today is going to be the last sort of core part of the coding. So whatever features we can get put in now is the features that our app is going to ship with. So with that in mind, I have an idea of what I want to do, and I'm going to come to our quiz model, and there's a few extra Hive fields or a few extra elements I want to add, properties that I want to add to our model so that we can do what it is we're planning on doing. So rather than do them one at a time, I'm just going to pop everything in. So the first thing I want to do is I want to split our quizzes into different categories. So we're going to want a final string category. I'm going to want to sort potentially our quizzes so we can dictate which ones we want near the top of our list. So I'm going to put in a final int sort order, and I'm going to want to randomize the questions sometimes, so I'm going to put a final bool random. Oops, this is a lowercase c. So all of those are going to need a Hive field ID, so let's put that in, and we'll just put them in order. Field 4, 5, and 6. Now, when adding new things like this, we need to be careful, especially if we were upgrading our app, because our existing entries within the database won't have these in. So we need to specify a default value for all of these. So we can do that, and I'm going to have the default value for my categories be gen, as in general knowledge. I'm going to have the default sort value for the sort order to be a large number, which means when we put in a sort order, we can say, well, we want this one first, this one second, this one third, and all the rest of them will then just get sorted in the current order. But because they have a high value, they'll be put at the end. And random, our default for that will be false, i.e. not random, be as it is now. Okay, let's take out our quiz. We'll keep our quiz empty and take out everything else in this file because we don't need this quiz data anymore. That's probably taken off one too many curly braces at the end. And then we can just come up into here, control dot, and generate data class, and that will put all our things back for us. We just need to add those new fields to our default empty. So those are going to be category, which is going to default to gen, sort order, which is going to default to 999, it's a number, and random, which is going to default to false. Also, when we come down and we load things in from the map, what happens if there isn't that entry within the map? Well, again, I'm going to make sure that gen is our default category, that 9999 is our default sort order, and false is our random. Okay, let's save that. And now our quiz model g.dart is going to be out of date. So let's regenerate that. We can do that with Flutter. I'm typing it in the wrong place. In the terminal, Flutter packages pub run build runner build. Now we might get an error here, but I'll let it run anyway so you can see what this error is. It hasn't. Okay, sometimes you may run into an error where it says that there are conflicting outputs, and it gives you a flag to delete conflicting outputs. If that's the case, you just need to run your command again with, and I'm doing this from memory, I think it is just delete with conflicting outputs, something like that. You just copy that from the error message that it gives you. It tells you what to run, but that's how you run it. Okay, in our case, it's worked fine, so we're good to go. So with that done, let's come back to our quiz repository and deal with the errors that we're not really handling. You may not have come across this yet, but there will be an error here. Let's imagine we've started our app for the very first time, so there's no existing Hive boxes, and for whatever reason there's no internet connection or our web server is down. Talking about the web server, I have already started it, don't forget to do that. So let's assume our web server's down. What's going to happen is it's going to come in, it's going to check for the update, it's going to try and get it but fail. And then if it fails, nothing happens other than it returns we have an error, and that's it. So we have a database that's totally empty and nothing's there. There's no quizzes. Users are just going to get a blank screen. So we need to do this here. Essentially, if we can't access the server, we need to get the stored data. And I left this in deliberately because we're also doing this bit twice. We don't need to do that. So what I'm going to do for a second is I'm going to comment out this line, and I'm going to set it up to take in here a string of data. And I'm going to copy that line and uncomment the copy, and this time we're going to decode the data. So it doesn't matter where the data is coming in from, we're going to decode it and we're going to add it to our Hive. Don't need that print there anymore. So here within our try catch, we don't need to do this loop anymore. And we don't need to save the data out. What we need to do is pass the response body to our store data function. So we're just going to change that to store data. So now we get a response and then we store the data if there's been a response. We should really do other checks here to check whether we've got a response not of 404 and other bits and bobs. That's a bit beyond what I want to do in this particular set of videos. If that all fails, then we're going to, and take this line now, cut it out of there, paste it into here. If it fails, we're going to decode our quiz JSON that's in our root bundle, and we're going to save that to a string called data. So let's do that. String data equals await that, and then we'll pass that data to our store data function like so. Now, we only want to do that if our database is currently empty, because what we don't want to do is have, the user might have been using this for months and months and months and have a new set of questions that it's got from our online, and then one day they come and do an update and it doesn't update for some reason. The website's down, they haven't got an internet connection, and then it's just going to put the original quiz back in, which is now out of date. That'll be frustrating. So we only want to do this fallback method if our database is empty. And we can do that easily by saying, let's try that, if box is empty. And as you can see, that returns true if there are no entries in this box. Put all that into curly brackets. So if there's an error, if we're not getting anything from online and our box is empty, let's get the root bundle installed and return. And we'll save that. Okay, let's refresh our app. We've got an error here. That's because we're now calling store data from our test button. We're going to change our test button. We don't need load data into Hive. I'm going to change this to empty Hive so we can test it. So empty Hive. So let's come back to our quiz repository and let's make that. We're not going to return anything, so it's going to be a void empty Hive. And this is only for debugging purposes. We're going to put our box dot, and we have a clear, and that should remove all entries from the box, and then it will become empty. So if we save that and save our home page, that should resolve all our errors. Not our home page, it is our home page, but it's our dev page that's within our home page. We now have a way of emptying the questions if we want to test that. Right, so the next thing I want to do is sort our sort order out. So I'm going to come to our quiz in our server, and for the second question, sorry, the second quiz, General Knowledge 2, I'm going to put in here a sort order of 1. I want this to be the first quiz in the list. Save. So if we look at our app running, we can see that obviously our second one is the second one, and that's simply because it's the second one in the list. And we want that to be the first one. Okay, so that will update at some point. In fact, I think it's just done that. We've got our do update message down below. So I think that's been updated. So we're good to carry on. So our list appears on our home page. So let's come to our home page and to our qubit. And it is in this function load quiz list that we're checking for an update and then admitting the load quiz list. Well, we want to change that here a little bit, and we're going to change it in a couple of ways. So I'm actually going to extract the quiz list first of all. So we're going to have a list of quiz called quizzes, and it's going to equal quiz list load quiz list repository. Sorry, it's going to equal quiz repository load quiz list, and we're going to then sort it, and we're going to sort it with a comparison function where we take the way sort works, if you're not sure, is it takes one item in the list and the one next to it, does a comparison and returns a number, and depending on the number returned, it sorts it. So what we can say is take a sort order and compare that to the next sort order. And compare to returns a negative number if this is less than the other one. If the 0 if they're equal, or a positive number if it's greater. So that gives us this sort number that the sort requires then to take that and to sort it. So if we save that and look at our emulator and do a reload, it's not going to work because we're not passing the quizzes. We're not omitting that list. Hang on, let's put that in quizzes into there, then do a reload. And there we are. We now have our sort taken care of. General knowledge 2 is now the top one. The other two are just in the order that they were loaded into the database and they're coming out of the database. Because by default, these both have the sort order number of 9999. Wonderful. So the next thing I want to put in is the categories. So let's come to our home page and we're going to put in a set of buttons that represent our categories, and we're going to do it above our list builder. So let's take our list view builder, and first of all we're going to wrap that in a column. Now a list view builder in a column creates havoc. If I save that, you'll see that our list view builder disappears. It can't work out its size basically, so I'm also going to wrap that in a widget expanded, and that will give it the sizing information it needs to show. Then above that I'm going to create a new widget which we're going to call categories. So let's come down to below that widget and put in a stateless widget called categories. And the categories is going to be a row of category buttons. So let's make one category button to start with. And just below that, let's create that class, stateless class, category button. Let's spell category right. Okay, so that is going to be, for now, and we'll worry about making everything look good later. For now, it's just going to be an elevated button which takes an on press and does something, and the child is going to be the category name. So we need to pass in the category name, and we also really need to pass in the category code. So let's do final string text and final string code, and both of those are going to be required. Okay, so the text is going to be whatever was passed in. So coming back up to our category button, which I've spelt wrong as well. Really? Let's just fix that. We need to pass in the text. So the first text is going to be general knowledge, and the code is going to be gen, and then I'm going to take that and we're going to pass in another category called music, and the code for that can be music. Let's save that, and there we are. We have our category buttons now that we can select. But what's that going to do? Well, we need some way of storing the category, and we're going to have to come back and change our homepage qubit. Okay. So at the moment, we've only got our qubit managing a list of quizzes, but now we want it to manage that list of quizzes and also the category. So let's come back to our homepage state, which we started to set up. And in our homepage is loaded, we're going to set up a final list of quiz called quizzes and a final string category. We need to set our constructor for that, so generate constructor, and that needs to be a const, and we need to override the props to be the two properties, quizzes and category. Okay, now we could do a copy with, but I don't think we're ever going to need a copy with, because if we change the category, we're also going to be changing all the quizzes. So there's never going to be a case where one of those changes and not the other. So let's save that and come back to our homepage qubit. And now here, what we want to do is we want to have a homepage state. And our initial homepage state is going to be homepage loading. Then when we emit a new state down here, once we've loaded our quizzes in, we're going to emit a homepage loaded, and the quizzes are going to be quizzes, and the category is going to be what? Well, we're going to need to put this in. So let's put in here a string category, and that is going to be not required, but it's going to default to gen. Okay, so this is our default category always. And so now when load quizzes is called, it's going to load the quiz, sort the quiz, and emit the quiz and the category. And that's going to break our home page, because in our home page we're saying that we're expecting a list of quizzes, and that's not true anymore. Now we're expecting a home page state. So instead of state is empty, we want to say if state is home page loading, then we're going to have the circular progress indicator. Now it would be good to say else do this, but that's not going to work, and I'll show you why. Okay, the reason that's not going to work is what we want to do now, instead of state.length, we want state quizzes.length. But it thinks the state is a home page state, and home page state doesn't have quizzes. The home page loaded does, which extends home page state, but not the home page state. So what we need to do here is cast all of this so it knows which state it's in. And we can do that by saying else if state is home page loaded, and just by doing that it knows that everything in here is home page loaded, and all of a sudden quizzes exists. So we just need to update where we've got state to state quizzes, because now we're accessing that property. And then we get the error that not all returns, not all the if statements return something. So what happens if it's not home page loaded and it's not home page loading? Well, we need to do something else. Now we know we'll never get to this state, or at least we shouldn't do. So I'm just going to return here text something went wrong, because if that ever appears, something really badly has gone wrong. Yeah, that's not good. You could also return an empty container or anything else. Right, let's save that and hit restart on our app, because our state has changed massively, and now we're back up. Okay, so now we need to come to our quiz JSON, and we're going to give one of our quizzes, let's give quiz number 3. Okay, let's put this in the category music. We could type Jen in for the other two, but that's defaulted anyway, so don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to save that. So in a few minutes when we get another update, that will be in our music category. So now we need to get that out, because at the moment in our homepage qubit we're getting all the quizzes, and now we only want to get the quizzes from the category, whichever category we've done. So here where we get the list, let's put a dot in there. I'll do this on the next line. Dot, and we can say where the element or the quiz dot category equals the category that we've put in. Now that doesn't return us a list. We need to then call toList to turn that back into a list. Okay, and that should be all we need. So when we start, we check for an update, we load our quiz list in where it equals the category, and if no category is put in, it's going to be Jen, and then we admit that after we've sorted it. So let's save that and refresh our app, and with a bit of luck we'll see. Okay, that's not working, and that's taken me a minute to figure out why it's not working, and it's because in our quiz repository this is failing, and I couldn't quite work out for me why, but it seems that this is opened up on a different port this time, 5501. So I'm looking at the wrong port. That's something to be aware of. So if I save that now and refresh, it should get in our latest JSON, which it does, and now we have music, or at least quiz 3 isn't showing because it's not part of the general knowledge. It's part of music, but that button doesn't do anything yet. So on our homepage qubit, we need to create a method to allow us to change the category. So we're going to call that change category. That's going to require a code, and then we can emit, first of all, homepage loading, just in case it takes any amount of time, and then we can emit the load quiz, but this time we can pass in the category of code. So we call change category and take in the code, and then we call load list with the code. So category is whatever the code is, it does that sort, and then it also saves that category, which we can use to style our buttons in a future episode. Now that should work. Let's save that and come to our home page and come to our button, and on our on pressed we can say context read homepage qubit dot change category and pass the code in, the code that we've set up for our category button. Okay, so now if we click on music, we should get music. Now, that works and is great, but there is one thing that I'm not happy about. Well, there's two things actually. Under our homepage Qubit, we're checking for an update every time we change the category. Now I don't want to do that, so I'm going to put in here a bool update equals false. Okay, and then we're going to say on the next line, if update, check the quiz repository for an update, otherwise just load our new list. That's good, except we do now, this is never going to check for an update. And here, when we first load the list up, we do want to check for an update. So we just need to put into here, update true. And from there, that will set that to true, run the check for update, and everything is good. Also, I just need to come back and change my quiz repository because I changed the duration when I was trying to figure out why it wasn't loading. I changed the duration to 1 second. So I'll put that back to 1 minute, do a restart. We've got an update, and now as we do that, that's super fast because it's not trying to do an update. But every minute it will do an update. Of course, we don't need it every minute. I'm going to set that to days 7. So once a week it's going to look at our server. And that, I think, covers that. We can get rid of this code now. And the final bit I wanted to do is randomize our answers if we've set that random to true. Let's just remind ourselves in our quiz model, we now have this random. And in fact, we haven't set anything as random. So let's come to our quiz JSON and we'll set our music one to be random true. That does mean in our quiz repository, I need to set this duration back to, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just put if true or, and that will force it to do an update right now. So I'll just do a refresh. We've got our update, and then I'll take true out again. Okay, so I can now come to our quiz page, and in particular we want the quiz page block. And when we load the page, we get a quiz and we admit that the quiz is ready and start. Now the quiz is kept here, and it's a reference to that quiz. So we can say here, if quiz random, i.e. if random is true, then quiz questions shuffle, and save that. And that is all we need to do. So if we come to our general knowledge quiz 1, we should find our questions are in the order that they were written. However, if we come to our music quiz, hopefully we'll find this in a random order, and we do. So that works perfectly. And if we run that quiz again, it should be in a different order, which it is. So each time we come to this quiz, it's now going to be in a random order. Oh, I got that wrong. So folks, there we go. That is the functionality. We could go on and we could do a lot more. We could put things like timers in. We've had a few suggestions about things like that. And sure, but I don't want this to go on forever. I want to now style it and make it look a little bit better, which we will do in the next episode. So if you've enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It does help me out. And we'll see you in the next episode, which should finish off this app for us. Until then, folks, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye now.